So the book that we're here to promote is This Savage Song, and the first thing I want to do, I'm going to turn mine down, it's a bit loud.
I say you're nice and bold,
Yeah. The first thing I want to do is wish you a congratulations, because this is a #1 New York Times bestseller.
It is. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a good month. It was a good month. In like the last week, it sold to like 5 countries. It's got a film deal and all of these shiny things.
Yeah, optioned by Sony recently.
Yeah, all I did was write a like dark existential book about like a monster having identity crises. So I'm quite chuffed.
Yeah. And it is a dark existential book about identity crisis of monsters and the questions of what is a monster and all that sort of thing. And we'll come to that in just a moment. But before we talk about the book specifically, I also want to wish you happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Which was yesterday?
Yeah, so I only know this because Facebook does that thing where it's like memories. And so yesterday Facebook was like, your first book came out 5 years ago today. And so here in the UK I only have 4 books out, but in the States I have 11.
11.
And so 11 books in 5 years is not so bad.
I would say that's pretty good.
I feel pretty good about it. What was great though is I was living here when I was working on that. I was finishing up edits on that first one. So I had just sold that first one and I lived here for about 3 months.
Here, Liverpool.
Here, Liverpool.
In a shed.
In a garden shed.
Yeah.
In a prison warden's backyard.
How did that happen?
That is a very, very strange confluence of events that involved me being completely skint and wanting to spend 3 months abroad because I was working on my second book, which was called The Archived, which is a YA novel that came out in the States. And I let a friend pick the city. I'd never been to Liverpool before, and she didn't tell me at the time she was dating someone from Liverpool. And so the day after I arrived, having never seen the place I was staying, she pieced off to like live with her new boyfriend. And I ended up having a room in a garden shed in a prison warden's backyard. Because apparently it was like a census issue, like he wanted to get more people on the property, and so like because he had all the people he could in the house, he went and he got like 3 garden sheds. And he put them in the backyard. Yeah, I had the smallest one. Like literally imagine like a proper shed, like big enough for like a single bed.
But like every writer has to have a shed.
Yeah, this is not the kind of shed that I necessarily like. I've seen writers create like quite awesome sheds. This was a pretty basic shed in the middle of winter with a giant spider named Bob. Yeah, like a spider that I found on day 1 and then promptly named because he disappeared very quickly, and I thought he would scare me less if he had a name.
Humanize him.
Yeah, I tried to humanize the spider. I never saw Bob again. And also the house was terrifically haunted. Like, terrifically haunted, garden shed, prison warden, pretty much everything you need to know about my time in Liverpool.
And if you are not overly familiar with Victoria's work, then that anecdote alone gives you some insight into her skills as a storyteller.
Well, I mean, really, like, reality tells the best stories. Like, it is a thing that, like, people always think I'm spinning yarns, and I'm like, oh no, I have, like, video proof of the fact that the shed was about as wide as my arm span. And I mean, it was fun, you know, I decided you can do anything for 3 months. I was there for 3 months. Liverpool was wonderful to me. This was like L18, so it was the suburbs. But because of that, I like came down to L1 every day, and I sat in the cafe and I wrote. And this was a bit of a sanctuary, so it's a bit surreal to be back, like almost 6 years later, and getting to do something like this. It's incredibly cool. So thank you guys for coming out tonight.
And thank you for coming. And you know, it's great to see you. I just want to backtrack again to that 11 books.
11.
How do you achieve that level of productivity?
Oh God, I wish I knew. I think I sold a piece of my soul for each one, so I'm getting down to like last slivers at this point.
Typical Slytherin.
Yeah, basically. Can I also just get like a show of hands, those who have their house? Okay, do I have Slytherins? Okay, that's like a fair showing. Do I have Ravenclaws? All right, that's the book lovers, right? Hufflepuffs? Oh, that's okay. You gotta be proud about it. I feel like half raised hands or something that Hufflepuffs do. I'm like, be proud. And Gryffindors. Yeah, it's all right. It's okay. I understand. They're like the main characters of the series or whatever. But it's all right. My like goal in life is to convert everyone who can be converted to Slytherins. I'm looking at you, Hufflepuffs, because most Hufflepuffs are inner Slytherins. It's like their second sign, their star sign or whatever. But yeah, 11 books. So not all of them, like the thing you have to understand is I write children's books, what we call middle grade in the States, which is for like primary school children, and then I write young adult novels, and then I write adult fantasy as well. So it's 11 books, but like not all of them are the length of Conjuring of Light, which is 650 pages long. Most of them are like 250 pages long.
And has the process of writing whatever grade you're writing for got easier as you got towards the 11th book or
no,
the 12th book?
Of course not. No. Of course not. If anything, I think you get more voices in your head. Like, on the one hand, I know objectively that I can do it because I have done it, and I have proof that I have done it. But like emotionally, you have more and more editorial voices in your head, and you become like first drafts become a lot harder because you're much more aware of the fact that it's not right. But no matter how many books you write, you can't write a good first draft. You have to write a bad first draft and then make it better. You have to have something on the page so that you have something to fix. And it's become harder and harder for me to do that. Like, it's become harder and harder for me to see what is working instead of just the massive chasm between what I currently have and the finished product that I want to have. And it's made worse by the fact that because of my schedule, I usually have in hand at any one time the very beginnings of a book and the very last pass of something about to hit shelves. So I don't even get to like look at other people's books and be like, wow, I suck, I'll never be like them. Like, I look at my own books and I'm like, I will never write like that again. So every book, the book before the one I'm working on now looks way too shiny to me. So like, you can't stop making a bad draft. You just kind of like learn that to muscle through it. And I'm always like, I retcon my own memory. I'm always convinced that the book, once it's done and finished and pretty, that process was beautiful. So now every single book, my friends have started like screen capping my emotional arc over the course of writing, and then they draw attention to it. So I'm like, guys, they're like, how's the book going? I'm like, it's never been this hard before. You guys, I think this is awful. And they're like, oh, I see we're in that stage. And they like scroll back through the emails and like, I remember the stage. I'm like, no. Darker Shade of Magic was perfect. Nothing has ever been as hard as Gathering of Shadows. And they're like, yeah, I mean, literally you could swap out the titles, and I have said the exact same thing at every single book, at every single stage. So I've learned to not trust that particular voice.
But it does seem as well that you are working all the time. Do you have like, what is your approach? Do you have like office hours that you keep to, or are you literally working all the time? Because I saw you tweet a photo, I don't know when, last week, and if those of us who zoomed in on the screen, because I'm sure I wasn't the only one.
All red.
Yeah, and it was clearly a page from Conjuring of Light.
Yeah.
And it was like, you're editing this in the airport. Like,
oh yeah,
you know.
I was editing it on the train today. I edited it in the airport. I was editing it in the hotel room last night until about midnight. Part of it is that Conjuring of Light is the third book in the Darker Shade of Magic series, and I want it to be perfect. I want it to be, like, nothing can ever be perfect, but I want to know that I gave it every single moment that I could. And the other part is just that, I love that Dowager quote where she's like, what is a weekend? And I'm like, I don't know either, okay? Like, I don't know either. Like, I haven't had a vacation in 6 years. I work 365 days a year, but the other part is that people assume I'm a very fast writer because of how many books I have come out, but I'm actually a very slow writer, and that means I have to be a very consistent writer. So I have friends who can sit down and knock out 10,000 words in a single day, and they only need to work a fraction of the year. I average 500 words a day, or maybe 1,000 words a day, and so I have to be writing or editing most of the year to get that done. The trick this year has been I haven't accounted for the time I spend promoting. And so I think I'm on almost my 40th event of the year. And when you factor in travel and things like that, that's a full-time job in itself. So I'm very lucky that I have a publicist who will be like, okay, we're sitting on a train. I'm going to take a picture of you in 30 seconds and send it to your editor. Do you want that picture to involve you editing? Or do you want that picture to involve you like listening to music and staring out the window? Because I can tell you which one your editor wants to see. So I need people around me who are going to pressure me and remind me that like even when I'm out having a blast and talking to readers, like the work needs to get done in order for me to get to do this again next year and come out and talk about Conjuring of Light. So it's a constant process, but I have a calendar, like I have a magical calendar. And it sounds very, very primary school, but essentially every single month I create a key system in the corner of my calendar using different colored stars. and I get like a blue star for 500 words written, and a gold star for going to the gym, and a red star for 100 pages read, because I try to read about 100 books a year, and a purple star for travel, whatever. And then every single day I keep track of the stars that I've earned, and there's no prize, there's no like, I can't do a reward system because it quickly becomes a pre-ward. Like if I'm like, I'll write 500 words and then watch an episode of Stranger Things on Netflix, like 8 hours later, I've finished Stranger Things and I have 0 words to show. Because I'm like, oh, well now I've just built up a lot of reward, now I'm gonna go earn it, and then I just start another show on Netflix. So I don't do a thing where it's like 100 stars equals a certain prize. My prize is like diminished self-loathing. Like I get to feel accomplished. Because I really don't like, it turns out like that the guilt of the blank square on that little calendar is a very, very powerful thing.
But it is like the gamification of productivity. Like that's like a really powerful and current thing, whether it's like getting kids, or well, not just kids, I do it, go out to walk 5 kilometers to hatch an egg on Pokemon. It's like, oh, I need to go home, which is there, but I'll just take this detour over there to, you know.
Honestly, if I could have a version of Pokemon Go that was like involving deadlines, where like I got to like hatch eggs only when I wrote a certain number of words and
oh my god, that would be amazing.
I'm already playing my own version of Pokemon Go, in which I call it buying books, and like there's no other prize in that I just like catch all the books. Like I just buy books wherever I go, and people keep telling me like that's not a game, that's just you spending money, and I'm like, no, like just watch, like I am winning this one. So I know, like I would love a version of Pokemon Go that could actually like help me with my deadline.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
There's really miserable ones. Like I have a couple of friends who use Write or Die. Does anybody know what Write or Die is? Yeah, okay. Write or Die is a program in which if you stop typing, it starts deleting.
Oh my god.
If you stop writing for too long, it begins like, and you can pick the rate at which it does it. It will start unwriting your manuscript.
Oh, I have nightmares about that kind of thing.
It gives me a panic attack just thinking about it. So like, I'm not that hardcore. Like that's not where my adrenaline comes from. But I know like whatever works for you. For me, it's like a cup of tea and like the same song on repeat very loudly in my noise canceling headphones, and like I just go to my special place.
We should probably, at this point, turn to the book, which is what's brought you here. I have to say that I absolutely loved this book.
Thank you.
I wasn't sure what to expect just from the cover.
Yeah.
Because I've always thought you've had really striking covers on the previous books that are out over here, and then this one I thought, oh, it's got a rose on it.
There's no rose in the book.
Yeah,
it's like a very, very violent, dark monster
absolutely
book.
And I looked at it and I was like, oh, surely like it's not going to be like a Romeo and Juliet thing or a high school romance or whatever, which are tropes that you definitely mess with in the book.
Yeah.
And it becomes very obvious very quickly that is not the book that Victoria's written.
It's an aromantic, so I always say it's actually like Sin City plus Romeo and Juliet minus romance plus monsters. Like there are 2 warring families, and in that way it is a Romeo and Juliet story. But there's like, they are not in love. They are just trying to stay alive in a world where violent acts breed actual monsters. Oh, thank you. So yeah, I'm glad that you were not misled.
So am I. And I can't remember where I read the summary. I think it might have been like on a review on Tor or somewhere, but there was a great summary of the book that they said it's about a human who wants to be a monster. It may even be the official blurb.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
A human who wants to be a monster and a monster who wants to be human.
Yeah. It's about Kate Harker, who is a teenage girl growing up in this really atrocious world who thinks that in order to survive, in order to succeed, she needs to essentially become a monster. Not in the literal sense, like there are literal monsters in this world. She needs to become a horrible person. She needs to gut the parts of herself that are weak and that care. And on the other side of this, you have August Flynn, who is an actual monster. He is a teenage boy who can only survive by eating souls. And he, when you first meet him, essentially is trying to starve himself to death because he would rather be human than be a healthy monster.
And that's one of the things that I love about your writing across the other books as well, is the way that you take a trope that we might expect, whether it be the one that this cover gave me or what a monster is, and then you just mess with it. Now, when you are planning, and I don't know how much planning you actually do, or if you just kind of get in there and write, but do you plan okay, so this is what they'll be expecting, and now I'm going to do this, or are you just naturally that subversive?
Yeah. So I have to answer that in a couple of parts. Like, so I'm not. There are people who plan, and then people who fly. In the States, you say fly by the seat of their pants, and then I realized that pants means something different over here than it does in the States. So like wing it. And I'm neither. I'm a connect the dotser, which essentially means that I have 5 to 10 story points that I need in order for my book to be my book. And that is the extent of my outlining. I put those story points in order, and then I let myself find my way between them, because if I know too much, I'm bored. And if I know too little, I'll get lost. But on top of that, the one thing that I know with absolute certainty is the ending. I don't ever start a book without knowing the ending, because I need to know who my characters are on the very last page, and then I rewind in my head to figure out who they need to be on the first page.
How solid is that? Like,
it's never changed.
It's never changed? Because I've done this with Patrick Ness, and he says he knows the last line.
Yeah, I know the last page.
Going in, he always knows.
I don't always know the last line. I wish I did. Yeah. I always know exactly where my characters are, physically and emotionally, on the very last page of the book. But, so that aside, to answer your question on tropes and subversion, I write almost exclusively about outsiders. Mm-hmm. And in order to write about outsiders, I need to understand insiders. And in order to understand insiders, I need to understand the society that they're a part of, the culture that they exist comfortably within. So because of that, the world building is actually the thing that I do first. For me, I try to make setting a character as much as possible. And so I design the world, and then in designing the world, start to wonder, how am I going to make this different? How am I going to make this new? Because one of the first rules I ever set out for myself 11 books ago was that, I'm going to write supernatural fiction. I'm not going to play with things that have already been done. I have no interest in it, because I would get bored. And you guys might read a book once or twice, and I have to read it 50 times. Like, in the course of writing and editing and promoting it, I need to make sure that I stay in love with it. In order for me to stay in love with it, I have to do something new. That's like the personal challenge I issued to myself when I first started writing, was never do it. If you're going to do something that's been done, you need to find a way to invert it. And so that's why I have a book called Vicious, which is about supervillains, and it's all about inverting the hero-villain trope. It's a book with no heroes. Superhero book with no heroes. And that's the entire point of it. And then Savage Song is a book about monstrosity and what it means to be human in a monstrous world, and vice versa. Darker Shade of Magic is a book about London that's not actually set in London. Like, the whole point of that is that London is one of the most overused cities in fantasy, and so I made not one London, but 4. And then only one of them actually is grounded in a realistic London at all. The others are completely not Britain-centric. So I have fun. Like, it's not me toying with readers, it's me entertaining myself. Because, I am that first reader. I have to be having fun. I'm just very, very lucky that other people have the same morbid streak, like the same strange, dark streak in them that I have in me. And so that's how I find my readers. That's how I find my tribe, is they're the people that they're me, I feel very protective of my readers because of that, because it takes a certain kind of strange to be apparently what is called a Schwablin now.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, okay.
Me being the Schwablin
you've really made it when you've got a fan name.
Apparently, it was my UK publisher did it, because they were getting a lot of emails from readers, and they were like, someone in the publisher one day was like, God, they're like Schwablins, and now I am like the Schwablin queen.
And are your younger readers who read the books that aren't published, they can be Schwablets?
Oh, yeah. I'm raising them from the ground up. I believe you have to catch them young, So that's my own little version of Pokemon, is I'm catching the tiny little dark readers. Exactly.
So the monsters in the book, there are, not including humans, 3 varieties of monster.
It's very important that you specified that too. Humans are the monster in this book, right? That's the entire theme, is that there is no monster in this book which has not been made by a human.
Yeah.
They are the generating source of all monstrosity.
And that's not just for those of you who haven't read the book, and I'm going to try and keep this as spoiler light as possible, but that's not just metaphor.
No.
They literally, these monsters are generated by the awful acts that the humans commit. So the 3 types of monster are Corsi, who are, if I've made my notes correctly, are formed by violent but non-lethal acts.
Yeah.
And they're horrific. They're basically shadows with teeth.
Yeah, shadows with teeth and claws.
Yeah.
And a hive mind, so they don't have a sense of self. They don't have an identity. They tend to lurk in the undergrounds because they only like the dark, and they eat everything, flesh, bone, everything in between.
And there's one scene I remember early on in the book where I think Kate's watching a video of a Corsair, and there's a man and he makes the mistake of stepping out of the spotlight of a street lamp, and then is just like
it's just like blood
ripped
splashed
apart
across like the street light.
And that was so cinematic. Like when I read that you'd had the book sold or optioned by Sony, I was like, well, of course, like that scene alone is just begging to be actually
I do try to
filmed.
write in a cinematic way, mostly because everything that you read, like I have choreographed in my head. So I block my scenes the way you would a stage piece. I need to know where everyone is standing at all times. Some of that's because I do a lot of fight scenes and I do a lot of scenes that need to feel very active, not passive. But yeah, I love that. Like, it was a fun moment, but they are well and truly horrible. There's a moment at which Kate and August have to climb down into the subway system, and August plays a violin. He steals souls using music, and he plays the violin. And the use of that, hence this savage song. And the use of that music can keep the monsters at bay, but the longer he plays, the strings on the violin start to give out. And so like the monsters are getting closer and closer and closer.
Yeah.
So they're nasty.
And like from a narrative point of view, just the tension of each string breaking, that was just like, and so the second type of monster are the Malkai?
Malkai, yes, with a hard K.
Yeah, I was like, is it Malchai?
No.
No, that sounds like a T.
Exactly.
So it must be Malkai. And they're formed by murders.
Yeah, they're the lethal acts of violence. They're murders. And not only so, they're murders, and because of that, they are a direct echo of the murderer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they bear a strong resemblance to the people who generated them. And they're very independent. They're very, very strong-willed. So I broke the book down into, like, again, me wanting to play with tropes. There's a demon, a vampire, and an angel, right? And so the Corsair are my demonic force, this kind of faceless, shapeless evil. The Malkai are my vampiric force, if you're going to use that analogy. Like, they consume blood, they consume life force in that way. They're sun-averse, but they can go out in it. They're just, if they go out in the light, they're essentially mortal. Like, they're pretty fallible. But in the dark, like, they are almost infallible.
And then the third, so this would be the angels.
Yeah, my angelic force, the Sunai, of which August Flynn, one of my main characters, is one, are soul eaters. But the caveat is that the Corsair can eat anyone, the Malkai can eat anyone, and the Sunai can only consume the souls of those who have made monsters. So they can only consume the souls of people who have directly contributed to the evil in this world. And because of that, August's older sibling, Leo, sees themselves as an angelic force, a sword of God. You know, they are addressing the cause, not the symptom of the situation. Yeah.
So if I was making a guess, I wonder if the idea for this book started to form with you while you were doing your MA in monsters.
Yeah, so this is a weird thing that I've only really realized retrospectively. I didn't realize at the time. So I actually was just back over here in Edinburgh getting a master's degree in medieval art history. And I call myself a master of monsters because my specialization is in depictions of monstrosity in medieval art. I specifically studied depictions of monsters in the Mappa Mundi, the medieval maps of the world that were used in largely ecclesiastical settings. And yeah, one of like the greatest themes that you learn when studying depictions of anything is that you're not actually studying a depiction of a thing, you're studying a reflection of the preferences and judgments of the artist and the society creating the thing. So when you look at medieval depictions of monsters, you're not actually really studying monsters, you're studying the mentality of society at that point in time, what they feared and what they worshipped. And that definitely fed in. I'd say there are three inspirations for this. There's that. There's Vicious, which gave its life to like the opening epigraph about plenty of humans are monstrous and plenty of monsters know how to play at being human, which is a Victor Vale line. And then, you know, I started writing this just over 2 years ago, and I live in the States, and we were dealing with the beginning of kind of this massive violence epidemic. You know, we had a kindergarten shooting, we had a movie theater shooting, and we just had, it seemed like every day you turn on the television, there was a new mass tragedy.
Yeah. Well, and that's President Obama gave more addresses to the nation, or has already given more addresses to the nation about shootings than he has held white tie dinners or something ridiculous and depressing like that. It's really horrifying statistic, and so I kind of hoped that by the time the book came out, I would be talking in a retrospective way about this, but that was one of the largest inspirations for Savage Song at the time. Is, you know, I was watching the news and I was thinking, how is there not an aftermath?
Like, we have a phrase now that circles the media in the States, which is thoughts and prayers are not enough, because we go through the same cycle every single time something horrific happens, which is that everyone expresses their condolences and then everyone moves on. And then it happens again. And so being a supernatural writer, what that largely means is that you're exploring realistic, real-world themes. You're just doing it through a metaphor or through a lens. And so for me, I was trying to process this darkness that was happening in the world around me and this level of evil, thinking there has to be an aftermath. Like, what if there was a physical kind of coalescing of evil that happened, all of that negative energy in the wake of a tragedy. And so we actually talked about the Korsai are born from non-lethal acts, the Malachi are born from murders, and the Sunai, these angelic forces, if you choose to see them that way, are born from mass tragedies. And so August Flynn, the second main character, is born from a school shooting. He wakes up in a middle school cafeteria surrounded by body bags.
Which is why he has the form of a
exactly. Which is why he starts out as essentially a 12-year-old boy. So it's a super light and cheerful tale.
Yeah. Bearing in mind, like, Vicious is about people experimenting with suicide or getting close to suicide to get power. It's like, you like to keep it dark.
I do.
Fine.
I do. And the Dane twins in The Darker Shade of Magic are just like sadistic twins that like. They're my favorite. I don't know, I got to write a flashback with them recently, and I was like, oh, I've missed you. I've missed you. And I told my editor, she's like, I worry some days. Like, I really do.
I mean, you could do a spin-off short story prequel or something
just
like
the Dane.
that.
It would be like the darkest, like, kind of like episodic escapades narrative ever. Like, the Dane twins go to school, and the Dane twins like learn to murder, and like the Dane twins like
now I'm picturing it as
things. Like,
I'm now picturing a picture book.
Oh god, it'd be awful. It'd be awful.
Well, that's a market you haven't tapped into yet.
It's
you haven't
true.
got that young yet.
I know, my agent's like, please don't. Please don't. You have so much work to do. You're so behind.
So we're going to move on. I want to move on to some of your future projects in a moment, but one last thing. So Savage Song, music is a dominant theme in the book. What does August's song sound like to you?
Okay, so I have to preface this. So music is a really big aspect of the book, and it's largely because I have zero musical talent whatsoever. Like, cannot sing, cannot play an instrument, cannot read music. Because of that, music has always struck me as a vaguely supernatural thing. Like, I kind of look at people who can play instruments as like, what strange alchemy are you working with your hands right now, and why is it so lovely? And like, when I try to do it, it sounds like cats screaming, no matter how hard I try. So because it's my like lack of talent that has like relegated musical ability to this supernatural place, August plays the violin because I've always considered it the saddest. And I don't know if anyone here has ever seen a movie called The Red Violin, but it is one of the most beautiful films ever. And essentially, like, August's song is the soundtrack from that movie. It's if you have not seen it, it is a movie probably from about 10 years ago, wherein a violin moves through history. Like, it changes hands through history, and you see it go through multiple wars, you see it go through multiple countries, it loses pieces, it gets pieces put back together, and all of the people that pick it up throughout history kind of change the song, the sound that it makes. So that's August. But as far as like what I listen to when I'm writing him, there's also an amazing violinist named Lindsay Sterling who does incredible, almost like electric violin. So, but yeah, if you go look up the soundtrack for the Red Violin, it's a very sad soundtrack.
Although I will say you're wrong, that the violin is not the saddest instrument, the cello is. But the cello is maybe not so easy to write chase scenes while carrying a cello.
That's the other thing. You have to like wonder, like these people have to have mobility, which is a thing that you like don't, like I'd love to make one
August
of
would have got caught straight away if he was carrying a cello.
Or a piano. Like, people have been like, what's he gonna do? Is he gonna be like one of those people that like pushes pianos on wheels like up and down the street? Or is he just gonna be like a very static killer? Like he can only like kill people who come to his piano bar.
Oh, but that could be like a spider and web kind of thing. I could see that working.
I mean, you have to project it out quite far. So I did try to go with like mobile instruments.
Yeah.
Though I do like I find the cello soothing, and I find the violin sad.
It's because you're dark and
the cello is like the sound my heart makes naturally, and the violin is like the sound it makes when it's in distress. So, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
The cello to me is quite calming.
So do you play? you said that you had music on while you were writing
Yeah.
August. Do you listen to music while you write just generally, or?
Only if it's the same song on repeat like 150 times, because I need music to become white noise,
Yeah.
or I have to use actual white noise. Like I use an app called Noisely, which is Noisli, where you can build your own white noise. So you can build white noise out of coffee shop sounds, fireplaces, heavy rain, the sea.
We were discussing this yesterday. One of my friends was looking for something to help them sleep at night.
Oh,
and
it's brilliant.
yeah, I've seen someone use the engine noise from the Starship Enterprise.
Yeah,
like as a background, like white noise. And
it helps. So I have found I really rely on white noise because I've got these big noise canceling headphones. If you ever see me around, I just wear them around all the time. They're like kind of my like cloak of armor. And I will blast the sound of rain. And what it is, it's the only thing, I am very highly distractible. I live inside the internet, I am online constantly, but the moment I do that, it's a conditioning system and everything else falls away and I can focus on my book. So my editor and I construct playlists pretty actively. I think the playlist right now for Conjuring of Light has like 65 songs on it, so we'll have to cull it down when we release like our official. But because we also pass the book back and forth and like add songs to our list, it really is a collaborative process. But unfortunately, because my background's in poetry, because I started in poetry, and I pay a lot of attention to cadence and to actual like syllabolic rhythms of sentences, I can't have lyrics.
No.
I can't. So I'll listen to songs in other languages, but I can't have the lyrics, or else it totally muddles the whole writing process for me.
Yeah, if I have lyrics playing while I'm writing, I have to sing along to them.
Yeah.
So it just completely ruins everything. So it's all instrumental. And for me, it's always like, if I put a CD on, so instrumental jazz or classical or something, I consider it, I must have had a good session if somehow the CD has ended.
Yeah.
And I didn't notice. And I'm like, oh, well, that means I wrote a lot. That was a good day.
I use a lot of soundtracks for shows and movies.
Yeah.
So like Harry Potter, especially Harry Potter 5, the angstiest Harry Potter in the world. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix has like some of the best, like, spoiler alert, Death of Sirius is like one of the best tracks in it. At this point, I'm like, no one can call too soon. Like, I feel like the statute of limitations on that statement has ended. But I'm currently listening to, anyone who watches Game of Thrones, the most recent season had a track called Light of the Seven, which you can just go online and you can just buy it. It's a 7-minute instrumental track that's from the very beginning of the last episode, wherein everyone's like getting dressed and going ready to go to this trial.
You know the one, yeah.
Oh, and I mean, I can tell I'm having a good writing session if it jumps up so it's been played like 10 extra times and I've not noticed, because I'll just set it to loop. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know what it is. It's just, I'm very, very particular. And yet, like, I've now listened to Heathens by 21 Pilots so many times that like that one can be a white noise track for me. It no longer distracts me.
Excellent. So you've mentioned A Conjuring of Light a couple of times. When can we expect that?
February 21st of 2017, which is like 6 years. I mean 6 months. It feels like 6 years. So it's like 650 pages, and I'm trying to be very, very, very attentive, because it's got to do a lot of work. And one of the reasons it's so bulky is so my publisher originally wanted 4 books. They're like, wouldn't it be elegant? There are 4 Londons. Your readers will love it. Do 4 books. And I had 3.5 books worth of plot. And so I was faced with, I could either thin it and do 4 books, or I could make sure I have the richest story possible and make 3. And so that's why book 3 is a bit longer than the preceding 2. They like inch longer, but it's one of the reasons it's quite a dense book. Because I just didn't want to stretch it for another year. I didn't want to like suspend anyone's closure in that way. So yeah, so it comes out February 21st, both sides of the ocean at the same time. And it's going to be a completely spoiler-free environment. There are no advanced copies of the book going out in any form. So no one will ruin it for anybody.
I can't wait,
yeah,
frankly.
We can all mourn together.
Because you committed cliffhanger in the last one.
Yeah,
so we won't talk too much about the last one, because that feels like it only just came out.
Yeah, 6 months ago, right? 7 months ago almost. It's a big cliffhanger, I will confess to that. If you haven't read Gathering of Shadows yet, I highly suggest that you stop on page 309. Because everything is lovely and like quite cheerful up to page 309, and it's only after page 309 that like things start getting unpleasant. So I always say that like the first 2/3 of A Gathering of Shadows are like a really nice cup of tea, and then the last third is like realizing the tea was poisoned. And so like I quite like watching people read. I especially like, this is gonna sound very weird, I especially like people reading being like, I don't know, man, I don't feel like enough is happening in this book. Like I'm like 200 pages in and like people seem okay, like nobody's died yet, everything's fine, people seem quite happy. I love seeing those. Like I love seeing people who are like, what's the hype about this book? Like nothing's happening. And then like you just like watch their slow like emotional spiral over the last 100 pages and I just sit there and I'm like
and then you see them afterwards like, oh my god, where's the next book?
Super, super angry afterwards. So anyway, so this is your forewarning that there is a cliffhanger. I know this was only my third book out on this side of the ocean, but it was the 10th one in the States, and so I got to pull I did 9 books without a cliffhanger, so no one can get very, very angry at me, but people still get very, very angry with me about it. The only thing else I could say is that the original cliffhanger for that book was worse, because I wrote it while I was doing my master's degree. I wrote 3 books and got the master's degree in 1 year.
What the?
Yeah, I don't know. I ended up, don't ever do that, by the way. I ended up writing my master's dissertation in 11 days. Yeah, I know. Thank you anyone who just had like a short intake of breath on my behalf. It was awful. But I got my degree. But I was so like emotionally and mentally drained by the point, like by the original first draft's ending for Gathering of Shadows. We killed like 90% of the cast. And my editor called me and she's like, hey, when's the last time you've slept? And I was like, it's fine, I got it done, because I had been pulling like all-nighters for like 3 nights. And she's like, okay, here's what I want you to do. She's like, I want you to take 2 days off, and then I want you to delete the last 10,000 words of that book and start again. She's like, because like authors joke that they'll hit a point where they're like, and then they all died, I'm done. I like actually was so mentally drained that I hit that point, and I'm so glad that I had an editor who was like, let's rewind and try again. So anyone who gets angry about the ending of Gathering of Shadows, I'm like, it could have been so much worse, you guys. Like, everyone you love could die. But they didn't. Like, it's fine.
So this third book, is this goodbye, whether they live or die, to these characters?
I like that caveat. So the way that I'm answering that question is that the Black Magic arc is 3 books long. The Black Magic arc is the arc which follows Vitari and Oseron and the dark magic from Black London and Kel and Lila and like their primary arc. That is the Black Magic arc. It is 3 books and it has a conclusion.
But you're not ruling out maybe returning to these
I have
Londons
every intention of returning to this world in the future. Like and what I would say, I know my publicist is in the front row, just like stop talking at this exact moment. No, what I will say is what I said earlier today. Hypothetically, if I were to return to the worlds, and hypothetically, I had a new cast of characters. Hypothetically, the surviving characters from Conjuring of Light would hypothetically be secondary characters. So I'm a firm believer that...
Everybody follow that?
Yeah,
yes.
Hypothetically, characters that you love, you will probably see again if they survive Conjuring of Light. But it's not...
Which we now know is a big if.
It's a big if.
Depending on a mood.
There's at least one happy ending in Conjuring of Light. I have like a lot of fun trolling people. Like it's now become my favorite thing to do to post quotes on Twitter, like horrifically out of context, and just wait. And so I will say, there's only one quote that I posted from Conjuring of Light that everyone assumes is out of context, that is completely in context and genuine, and that is the line, "They missed the bed but hit the wall." And everyone is like, no. Everyone's like, that must be a fight scene. It's not. Like, it's not. But it's always the line where people are like, now we know she's just trolling us. And I was like, that's like literally the one time I posted, like, people were like, give us a sexy moment. And then I posted it and they're like, we don't trust you. And I'm like, no, you asked for it. Like, it is part of a scene that my editor and I, neither one of us can work on without blushing furiously. And like, I don't startle easily. Like, Like I can pretty much, I feel comfortable writing things, and like the whole time I wrote the scene, it was like midnight, and I was just like giggling to myself, and I like texted my editor, and I was like, you'll never believe what I just wrote. And she was like, oh God. And then she read it, and she just sent me back like gifs of like anime characters going like bright red with blushing. So, yeah, hypothetically, people that you love, you would see again, only because that's what I would want as a reader. I wouldn't want to let go wholesale. But I mean, I've worked very, very hard to cultivate worlds wherein you have only kind of gotten the beginning. I will never continue a story past what I think it needs. So if I do it again, it will be a different story. It will be somebody else's story. I don't believe in this kind of just like rambling on as long as you guys will buy books.
Yeah.
That's not really the point of it for me.
And yet, I mean, those characters, like, we love them. I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone in this room. I mean, I also love your descriptions of them. So your description of Ree, I mean, not in the book, although yes, in the book, but off the cuff as well, where like Prince Harry meets Jack Harkness.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Or at least for him in book 1.
Yeah.
I would say that Rye is a character that changes a lot over the course of the series as I like slowly strip away everything he loves. And he's the character that like definitely ages emotionally. But yeah, also I just have to say like one of the reasons this book is so late is that like I'm having a very hard time letting go. Like I keep working really hard up until about the second to last part, and then like hitting the brakes because I'm not quite ready to say goodbye to anybody, and so I just like slow down to this crawl wherein I just angst over every single line, and my editor's doing the same thing, so she can't be terribly mad at me. But like I don't want to say goodbye.
I'm sure that none of us do either. I also, I suppose, want to ask you about the sequel to Vicious.
Vengeful, yeah.
Vengeful, which is also coming out next year.
No.
No? Oh,
it's going to come out the beginning
somewhere.
of 2018.
Okay.
So I was like...
Schedules have slipped.
I'm so behind on things. No, so Conjuring of Light will come out February 21st, and then readers can look for Vengeful probably just about the next February.
Okay.
I'm fast, but I'm not that
I'm
fast.
sure I saw somewhere, but, you know, that's fine.
Oh yeah, Savage Song.
I got my books mixed up.
So the sequel to Savage Song, which is our dark duet, and that's only 2 books, that series. Like it's a diptych, it's 2 halves of a whole. Like I feel I know exactly the story I want to tell and exactly how long it takes to tell it. Dark Duet will be out next summer, assuming that I finish it.
Diptych is such a good word, so much better than duology. Duology isn't a thing, people.
No, it's not. And I think that it doesn't really like, there's a difference between a book and a sequel.
Yeah.
And something like a diptych. So a diptych is like, in art, it's the 2 pieces of art that face each other. This Savage Song is the origin story of a monster and a monster hunter. Our dark duet is the result. So after you read our dark duet, you will be able to look at this Savage Song as a prequel, as an origin story to the people that they are in book 2. So in that way, they're very dependent books on one another.
And that seems like a good place to kind of throw it open to you guys.
Do you have any questions? Or
yeah, so we've got like 15, 20 minutes.
We can stare, but it gets
right,
really
okay.
awkward.
Put your hand up if you've got a question, wave if you want a lolly.
How involved are you in the Darker Shade of Magic TV show, and like when do you think that like sort of gets the full roll into that?
Darker Shade of Magic TV show, how involved are you?
So here's a funny story. So Vicious originally sold as a movie. It's still in the works. But it was my first time really having that happen, and I had no creative control, and it was really overwhelming because then I got the first version of the script and it didn't look anything like my book, and they were like, sorry, like you signed on the line, and like that's how it works. And so when my production company bought the rights to A Darker Shade of Magic, this is the other reason I'm very behind right now, and so you can blame them. They came to me and they said, you know, we can spend 6 to 8 months looking for someone who connects with the material the way you do, or you can write us the television pilot. And if you write us the television pilot, essentially you will be able to dictate the aesthetic of the entire show. So it wasn't, like, it's not a guarantee that it will get made. Things in television and in film take about 5 times as long as things in publishing, which is very frustrating. But what I can say is that, like, I am so creatively entrenched in that project that if and when each step happens, like, I'm involved in it. So I feel very strongly that either the television show will happen right, or it will not happen. Like, I will not actually, as much as I would love to like walk on a red carpet and take a picture between Kel and Lila and Dry, like that is not a thing I'm going to do if I feel like it's not a faithful adaptation. Because, and I know that sounds really selfish, but at the end of the day, like, a writer's name gets attached to a thing, regardless then of whether they have any input in it or not. And then when a television show or a movie comes out, maybe it tanks, then that writer's name is attached to it. And like 90% of the time, the writer hasn't had anything to do with it. They've just sold the rights to it. So it's really important to me that I be creatively involved. But it's also like a very expensive, very difficult project that we want to do right. So we're looking at European show running teams. We're trying to figure out what's the best city to do, to have it based in. So right now, the script is fully written. The pilot script is fully written, and we've got a really good production team, and now we're building like our show running team, like the actual people who have to like deal with it every day, because I can't. So yeah, anytime I have news, I will post it. It just takes ages, and I will believe that it's a show when I get to like sit on set and watch it be filmed and then air, and until that point, it's like a really cool dream that like I'm not going to count on, but I really, really hope it happens, obviously.
And at this rate, you'll be able to get some like discount King's Landing sets or something.
Exactly,
maybe.
That's my hope. We'll just wait for Game of Thrones to end, and we'll just like swoop in and like take some of their props. I don't know which ones we would need, but like at least like some, like I'm not the Iron Throne, but like a throne. I can take like one of the secondary thrones.
Any other questions?
I don't know if it was just me like reading into it
Yeah.
too much, but when I was reading Vicious,
Yeah.
is there any like parallel with like Frankenstein because of his name?
Vicious and Frankenstein.
Okay, I get asked this question a lot, and it's one of the most fascinating questions because, like, no. If anything, Vicious is the perfect example. I had been in publishing 2 years, 3 years, and I was starting to lose my joy. Publishing is kind of a messy business. Like, writing is something that I love, and publishing is something that I don't really like. And so I started to write a project that was just for me, that would never see the light of day, so I could do anything I wanted. It could be as weird as I wanted, and that was Vicious. But in the very first iteration of Vicious, Vicious was not about Victor or Eli. Vicious was about another EO who came to Merritt. This is gonna sound so, I like hate actually, like, it sounds so cheesy. He came to Merritt, and 2 different gangs tried to recruit him. And one called themselves the heroes, and other called themselves the villains. And neither one was heroic or villainous. It was just that one got the name first. Like, this one gang called themselves the heroes, and so in response, this other gang called themselves the villains. And the only reason that people were on either gang is because someone that they hated was on the opposite one. So the entire gangs were composed of personal vendettas. And the leaders of the 2 gangs were these 2 guys named Victor and Eli. And so I was figuring out all of the little gang dynamics of who hated who and who had a vendetta against who. And I got to the kings of their gangs, Victor and Eli, and I had to figure out what their relationship was. So I opened up a separate document to try and start to explore their backstory and what happened was Vicious, And so why that happened, why Victor is named Victor, is originally Vicious was going to be his super villain moniker. So that was going to be his term, his name for himself. And so I wanted to think of like what name lends itself to Vicious, and so I backed Vicious up to Vic and Vic to Victor. The other half of that answer, if you ask my editor, is that I'm a horrible narcissist who is writing an autobiography because my name is Victoria Elizabeth and my characters are Victor Eli, and they like reflect my opposite sides of my personality like really, really well. So it depends which story you want to believe. Like, I'm more inclined to believe it just happened that way. My editor is inclined to believe that like I was like basically doing self-exploration on the page. But no, and it does have a lot of Frankenstein like imagery and ideas, and it was completely unintentional.
2 things about that answer. One, in an alternate world somewhere, there is a book that you scrapped called Vendetta.
Right?
Because that's the perfect 3rd title.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm actually hoping for Vicious, Vengeful, and Victorious.
Okay.
As the 3. So we'll see. So yeah, Vengeful does come out beginning of 2018 and is set 3 years after Vicious. Same cast. Same pickup exactly. Like, we don't pick up exactly where we left because 3 years have passed, but same core cast.
And the other thing is, you mentioned writing Vicious for yourself, and I'm just going to flag this up for the audience that you wrote a really great blog post that I think, did it go up
Thank
today
you.
or did I just see it today?
No, you just saw it today. This is on the overnight success. I wrote it about 3 weeks ago.
Okay, yeah, and it's just Victoria talking about the phenomenon of being an overnight success who has been writing for 5 years and has done 11 books. But that like when you think of authors who've become successful and got like these amazing books, you think, oh well, you know, the trajectory is just up. But
it's crazy. No, I mean, like the very, very abbreviated version of that post, which you can find usually on my Twitter feed,
and is really worth you reading.
Thank you. Is my very first book sold the month after I graduated college, and it sold to Disney. And it was a very small book, very small deal. It's completely out of print. If you can find it, like, good on you. And it's this tiny little book called The Near Witch that I love so much. And then they had me write a sequel. And then the sequel, they decided they didn't want it after they had me write the entire thing. So they had me write a new book. And then halfway through that series, the archive, they decided they didn't want to do that series anymore, so they stopped it. Without, like, you know, like, because publishers can do that. And it looked like my career had suddenly ended, just very, very swiftly. So that's why I started writing Vicious, because it was that or I knew I was going to walk away. I was really emotionally hurt by the whole process. Like, it felt very personal. And that's the hard thing. That's the dichotomy about publishing, is that to be a writer, you somehow have to take away, you have to flay yourself. You have to take away all of the skin and get down to, like, the vulnerable core. And then to be an author, to be published, you have to put it all back on and then put armor on top of it and somehow be able to do both simultaneously. So I wrote Vicious to kind of rekindle my love, and it was this secret project. And had I not been writing it when Disney stopped my second series, it would have all, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know. And so then, you know, and then I had a series for Scholastic, which does a lot of like children's books in school clubs and fairs. It sold 750,000 copies, and yet bookstores never picked it up. They didn't want it. So like there's all of these highs and lows, you know, and I can chart which books got the best store placement and which books never sold. And so it's just that like a career is not a clean thing. A career is not, and an author friend of mine, and if any of you are writers, honestly, and aspiring authors, it's the best advice I can ever give you. If you are in this industry long enough, everything that can happen will happen, the good and the bad. And as long as you remind yourself of that, then you know that like that is the proof that you are still in it. That the only way you prevent the good and the bad from happening is to not be in it, is to not participate and not put yourself out there. So it's the par for the course, it's the highs and the lows, and it's just about like, the main takeaway from that post is that half is luck and half is stubbornness. Like, you know, a large portion of this industry is luck, but like the reason I'm still here 5 years later is like sheer stubbornness. We have debut groups which go up for every author. So I was a debut in 2011, August 2nd, 2011, and I think there were 197 authors in my children's literature, so just like middle grade and YA debut group for my year, and I think 14 of us are still authors 5 years later. So like if you can just like be a stubborn asshole and like not quit, like that's me. Like my thing is I get angry. Like when someone tells me no, like I decide to prove them wrong. Like I don't get self-pitying, like I'm a Slytherin, I get back, you know? Like my goal is to like have the last laugh in any situation. And so as I write in the adult genre sphere, which has like a very big history of sexism, I love it because every single time I sell a book, I just like think to myself like, haha, you can't kill me. Because like I'm just like, I'm still publishing, you know? And so you kind of have to have that mentality in this industry to just be like, I'm going to prove them wrong. And yeah, that's how I know I'm a Slytherin.
There was a question at the back.
In Vicious, Victor Vale had the power to like control pain and
Yeah.
himself and others, and for practically my whole life I've had chronic pain every day, and you know, before I even read Vicious, I wished I had powers similar to him. So when I kind of like read that he got it by electrocuting himself, part of my brain was just like,
no, don't do it.
and I was just really curious how you came to think of it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I won't be too spoilery aside from Victor's powers, because you do find out each of their abilities over the course of the book. But in Vicious, Victor Vale has acquired the ability to mediate pain thresholds, and in so doing to turn off someone's pain and to turn it up. And the reason he has that very specific ability is I wanted to give him a power that could make him a hero or a villain. It's all in how he chooses to use it. He can choose to hurt everyone around him, but he can also choose it as a mercy. Like he turns off Dominic's pain. He's a war veteran who's in chronic, constant pain, and he now because Victor's Victor, he uses it as a bartering chip. He uses it as trade. But the fact is, like, I need to give him a power that is outward facing, unlike Eli's, which only pertains to himself. I want to give him power which was outward facing and completely in the hands of the person doing it. That is a power that would function very differently depending on the personality of the wielder. So I need to give him something that could make him absolutely evil or absolutely good. And he chooses, of course, to be neither. He tends to use it the way any good analytical sociopath would, which is for the best ends possible. But yeah, that is the reason his power is exactly that. It was one of the only ones that I also just really loved and was like, that's the power I wish I had. But I wanted to give him something that he could misuse and use well, because it's what humanizes him in the course of the book is how he chooses to use. He uses his power to turn off Sydney's pain. He uses his power to turn off Dominic's pain. He uses his power to turn off the dog's pain, you know? But he doesn't, like, he also uses it to his own ends. So I think it's as gray morally as he is as a character. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Where's the weirdest place you've ever had an idea? Like you mentioned, you've been like all over the place, like recently.
What's the weirdest place I've ever had an idea? So ideas are one of those things that
A
like
shed in Liverpool.
Yeah, right. Probably a garden shed in Liverpool. No, you have to understand that like most of my ideas come from the question, what if? And so most of my ideas come from very ordinary places. The very first book I ever wrote did not get published, all right? I wrote it when I was 19, and it was called The Shadow Mile. And the entire book came from me walking down a garden lane near my house, and there was a tall wooden fence, all right? And the wooden slats were spread apart just enough so that you could see a little bit of space between each one. And what happens when you walk past a fence like that is you get this kind of stop motion movie happening, like you kind of get a glimpse beyond the gate. And as I was walking down this long wooden fence, I saw into a yard, and in the center of the yard there was a door. But the door was just sitting upright in the center of the yard as though an entire house had been knocked down around it and the door hadn't been. And so my stories come from moments like that, because the immediate question I asked myself was, what if I were to go over and I was going to open the door? What would I see on the other side? Now, I'm the kid that always wanted the world to be stranger than it was, so I'm the writer that writes the world stranger than it is. So I would never assume I would see the yard on the other side of that door. And in this very first book that I wrote, what I saw was the veil between life and death. And so I had a girl in my very first book who finds a door in a yard, and it finds a shortcut to the land of the dead, and her mom has just died, and so she goes through, you know? And so it's hard to think of like places. I'm a chipmunk writer, which means that like some people, I hate those people, get their ideas in like one fell swoop, and they know, they have everything all put together, they dream it. And I'm like, screw you. I pick up my story pieces over a very long period of time, usually 6 months to 2 years, over which I'm keeping my idea in the back of my mind and I'm adding little tiny kernels to it. And so it's really like, I don't know what the day is going to be where the pieces come together. Sometimes it's entirely random. Sometimes it's like, I had the very first idea for A Darker Shade of Magic was actually just an image in my head that I had had for about 7 months, which was of a young man who was wounded walking straight through a wall and colliding with a girl dressed as a boy who picked his pocket. And that's a scene. That's one of the most important scenes in A Darker Shade of Magic. It's when Kel and Delilah meet. But I had no idea, because I hadn't at that point decided that I wanted to write a story about magic and parallel worlds and all of these things. And the moment that I got the parallel worlds cue, like that I was trying to like accumulate this in my mind, I realized he hadn't like walked through a wall between two rooms, he walked through a wall between two worlds, and why was he running, and what had she taken, and all of these things. And again, the what ifs and the what ifs and the what ifs. So I wish I could say, I wish I had these great origin stories for my books. I know like where I am when I'm writing them, because I tend to be in different cities in different countries, but when the ideas happen, like I'm probably pacing my front yard or walking my dogs or in the shower or at the gym. I do a lot of plot work. I am a distance swimmer, so I do a lot of plot work staring at the blue stripe on the swimming pool floor because I'm there for like 2 hours. And it turns out it's like a perfect sensory deprivation tank, because you're staring down at this line on the floor with no other distractions except your own breathing, and you have to keep it even for distance swimming. And so that is probably like where the vast majority of the coalescing between the seeds of ideas comes from.
I hate swimming. So for me, I'd just be like, don't drown, don't drown. I'd get no productive thinking done at all.
You'd just be panicked.
Yeah, I'd just be panicked the whole time. Okay, that is all the time that we have. This has been great. This is one of those moments where I realised that I have one of the best jobs going, because I just got to sit and chat to you for an hour, and it's been great. You guys can all have a little conversation as well and get all of your books signed.
Yeah, I'd love to sign books.
And we're going to do the signing, and we've set up a table just around the corner.
Perfect.
So there's loads of copies of this Savage song on a display by the escalator. We also have lots of copies of the other books. If they run out on there, we'll refill them. But thank you very much for coming.
Thank you guys so much.
And thank you to Victoria.
Thank you.